Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, this is Craig, and I just wanted to give you an update. Over the last 9 months, in large part because of your listener support, we've managed to build this show into one of the top guitar and human interest podcasts online. As a result, we now have openings for a select group of businesses to advertise on and sponsor this show. And I thought you, as a listener, would be in the best position to make recommendations to business owner friends of yours who might benefit from advertising here on the Everyone Loves Guitar show. So if you know a business owner who might profit from advertising on this show, have them connect with me by going to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertising. Again, that's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertising. I'd love to have a brief conversation with them to see how we might be able to help. Thanks for your help, and now let's get on with the show. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar. I've got a really cool guy, cool player, and a guy who's highly in demand out on the West Coast. We're here today with the ever-loving Mike Fish Herring, who pretty much everybody knows, and he knows everybody. He's a really diverse studio and touring guitarist. He's scoring TV shows. He's got his fingers in a lot of stuff. Originally from Philly, he currently lives in L.A. Fish got his start at age 5, taking violin lessons from his grandfather. Around the same time, he also began developing some technique on guitar. Throughout the early years, he was fortunate to play in jazz workshops and master classes with the late Grover Washington Jr. and bass player Stanley Clarke, which we'll talk about that. By the time he graduated from Settlement Music School and the Performing Arts High School, he'd already worked with loads of local bands and artists, gaining touring experience. After several years of teaching guitar and working with several jazz, rock, and funk bands in Philly, he began touring the world with artists from the unknown to the legendary, which eventually brought him to L.A. There, he sprouted some new roots as a session musician while continuing to tour with respected artists as Tina Marie, Drew Hill, Johnny Gill, Prince, Christina Aguilera, and a host of others. Along with touring, he was also fortunate enough to have several appearances on Saturday Night Live, The Today Show, MTV, the Grammy Awards, American Music Awards, and The Tonight Show, amongst many other shows. He also appeared on records for artists such as Mariah Carey, Tupac, Nas, LeAnn Rimes, Sadea Garrett, Celine Dion, and others, including some multi-platinum records. He also has a number of songwriting and production credits on TV and film soundtracks. Fish, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Craig.
We just had like a whole interview beforehand. I was just finding out all the stuff he's got going on. Talk about your granddad. I get the feeling that he played an important role in your career.
Oh, for sure. Well, as far as I knew, his job was he was a violinist. That was his job. He instilled in me that music can be a job. Just as much of a job as any other job, and that I think that made it easier for my parents to digest.
Oh yeah.
When I made that step of saying, okay, this is what I do for a living now, which I never really said that. It just happened over the years. It's the only job I've ever done, so it wasn't like I was on a path to be a nuclear physicist. And I want to do music. I never had anything to fall back on because music always, was always there. So I think from my grandfather, I learned I didn't just learn music and theory and how to read and and how to play, but I learned that it's a business and it's a job and there's a union and there's it's not just a hobby, it's a business.
And that made it easy for your folks to get behind you and support what you're doing. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Tell me about playing with Grover Washington Jr. and Stanley Clarke. How did that come about, and what did you learn from each one of those guys?
Oh man, well when I went to a school called Settlement Music School in Philly, which is all across the board. They taught everything, but it was they focused on classical and they focused on jazz, which which Philly does well in a lot of different ways. But it's the same school that Grover had gone to. It's the same school that Stanley Clarke had gone to. You know, they'd both taken lessons there when they were younger. Pieces of a Dream was also there. Joey DeFrancesco was there the same time I was there. You know, and these are jazz greats.
Yeah.
Like Joey is phenomenal. I played with Joey when he was probably 9 years old, and his feet could barely touch barely hit the pedal on the roads.
That's funny, man.
And I remember playing with him back then, and since Grover had gone to the school, he came back, and he was, you know, he's such a legend in Philly. He came and did master classes, and I was chosen to play with him at you know, during the classes, and that's where I met some of the guys from Pieces of a Dream there, and ended up playing on their records.
Did you?
Years later, yeah. And it was the same with Stanley. Stanley came back, did the master class. I was chosen to play with him for that, and then I had jammed with Stanley. I wouldn't say probably 10 years ago. I got a call saying, "Hey, come to Mates and do this. You know, play with Stanley. He's looking for a guitar player." I don't think he ended up using a guitar player on that run that he was doing. But we jammed. I talked to him about that day. I was like, that day changed my life. That day that I met you at Settlement Music School, and he was like, "Oh shit!"
Did he remember that?
I don't know if he remembered it or not, but. Yeah. You know, I'm sure, you know, somewhere in his memory, he remembers going to Settlement Music School and playing with a bunch of kids. But I think I was 15 at the time. So it probably the only time I ever met a musician and was completely awestruck and starstruck and didn't know what to say.
Meeting Stanley.
Yeah. Because I was listening to the Return to Forever records at that time, and I was like, I knew every note that he played on those records, and I was listening to his solo stuff and the Clark Duke project, and I had seen Return to Forever, so I'd seen him perform live, and it was a pretty intense moment.
Yeah.
And then I just had to keep up with him that day.
Did you learn any specific music lessons from them, or like how to entertain, or anything like that?
No, I think it was a more general kind of thing. It's hard for me to remember some of that stuff because I may have been high at the time too. So
disclaimer.
I was 15. So
high school musician high. That's so weird.
And I was going to a performing arts high school.
Yeah, it's so weird, huh? Hey, for each one of these artists, you've played with so many cool people. I was curious if you could talk about how you got the gig, and then maybe a cool or interesting story about working with them. Prince. Start with him.
That came about through Kirk Johnson. I don't know if you're familiar with Kirk Johnson. Kirk had been with Prince since the 80s, since he was involved in Purple Rain. He was in Purple Rain, been a close friend of Prince, and you know, working with Prince for years. And I got a call from Kirk, basically saying, we're starting this project called Funky Bald Heads, and you're bald head, and yeah, I hear you're funky. So, and it was a side project that he was working on with Prince, and it all came together, and I went out to Minneapolis, and one thing after another, and we're at Paisley Park, and we're tracking it, and we're tracking at Kirk's studio, we're tracking at Paisley Park, and we're playing at Paisley Park, and then next thing we know, we're doing records, and then we hit the road with Prince. And playing with him was a learning experience, because he wasn't just a great player, he wasn't just a great entertainer. He was an amazing singer, amazing dancer, amazing guitar player, can play every instrument, but his arranging skills, especially the way he would arrange guitar parts, and find little, it's like puzzles. Like, he's putting a puzzle together with guitar parts. There's one part over here, there's one part over here, and they come together. That shit is like glue. And that's to me, that was the biggest lesson. That and his work ethic. But yeah, it all started with Funky Bald Heads. Really initially coming through Kevin Walker as a bass player, who's played with everybody. Kevin Walker's played with Justin Timberlake and a ton of artists. He was a bass player in Funky Bald Heads. And we had a blast. We had a blast making records and making great music and touring with Prince, and Prince saying, "No, we're not going to do a record deal. We're not going to do don't do a label. Don't." And that was at that time where he was very anti-record label and anti-management. And, when the tour ended, everybody went home.
That was it.
And that was pretty much it. And we've gotten together a few times over the last, we got together for a reunion last year. It was last year. And it was amazing. Mike Scott was in the band. Mike Scott also played with Prince. We had a blast. It was just so much fun.
Did the stuff you learned from him help your own songwriting? Because you said arranging was so critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, his songwriting I'd been studying since since I first heard him. Listening to how he put things together. But yeah, also watching his process of how he worked. I took a different approach to the way I did things too, and I think it was just an overall amazing learning experience. His work ethic is the one thing that always stood out to me because it's nonstop. You just keep doing it and doing it and doing it until it's right.
Yeah, you mentioned it a couple of times. So, in what way was his work ethic? Like, it was just I guess I just said it. He wouldn't stop. He would keep going no matter how long, how many hours. He just wanted to get it done.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Christina Aguilera, I know you're about to go back out on tour with soon. Talk about how you got connected with her and maybe an interesting story about that experience.
I got a call. I think it was 2000. It was either 2001 or 2002. It was 2002, and the Stripped record was just coming out. It was before the Stripped record came out. I got a call. It was through Ricky Minor, and Ricky was putting a band together for Christina. And it just so happened that the drummer who was playing with her was Brian Fraser Moore, who was a friend of mine from Philly. Brian plays with Justin Timberlake, and he plays with everybody. He's been all over the world. He played with Janet Jackson. He played with Usher. He played with everybody. So there's Brian sitting behind the kit. And there's Rob Lewis, a musical director who I had met years before when he was a student at Berkeley. And, we were friends, and that became such a strong unit. But yeah, the call came from Ricky Minor saying, come over to Center Staging, and there was an audition process. And after I played, Ricky said, stick around. So I stuck around. It's been like 16 years. So.
Was that congratulations. Was that like a cattle call audition?
I wouldn't say it was a cattle call. I didn't see too many other guys there. I saw maybe one or two other guys. So, it wasn't like that kind of situation. I think they had called in a couple guys and said, come in at a certain time. But yeah, it didn't seem like that. I didn't see 15 guys sitting in a hallway or sitting outside or waiting in the cars or anything. It was just, I think he just wanted to see who would fit in personally and musically. And there's some great cats in the band. And Rob Lewis, who's the musical director, is still Christina's MD right now. And Ethan Farmer, who's I don't know if you know Ethan, but man, one of the baddest bass players out there. Ethan's still playing bass with Christina after all these years. Brian's playing with Justin right now. So Stanley Randolph is playing drums with Christina. He's been doing that with us for the last 8 or 9 years. So it's a really strong unit. And what's cool is that same unit has gone on to play for a bunch of different artists. Oh,
so you got that the reputation, the word is out then about, what you guys have done together. That's great.
Yeah.
That's really amazing that you've been with her 16 years, man. That's not really common.
No, it's not. It's not, to find a gig that, first of all, a gig that'll last that long.
Right. An artist has got that staying power.
Right. An artist that can stay in a career that long. That's, but she's got a powerful voice. She's she's got an amazing voice, and people know that. And she's had some great songs, some timeless songs. So that helps.
Are you on?
She's got a new record coming out, so I think that's something to promote. So we're doing some promo stuff before any touring happens. We're doing the Today Show and the Tonight Show and whatever else comes up. But we've been doing mostly private shows with Christina over the last 8 or 10 years.
That's great, man. I know I talk to everybody loves those private shows. I'm assuming, but financially they're probably pretty lucrative for everybody.
Yeah,
People
it's good.
Seem to like them.
Yeah, it's a good paycheck, and it's usually pretty easy because it's an hour-long show. We go and you do a sound check for a couple hours, and then the next day you work for an hour.
Yeah.
And we've flown to some amazing places. In the last couple of years, we've been to Morocco, we've been to Cyprus. We just went to Azerbaijan.
Yeah, I know. Last time you sent me something. It's like, hey, I'm in Azerbaijan now. I was like, well, that's interesting. So that was on a private show. So do you have to go in and like?
Azerbaijan was not a private show. That was for the Formula One race.
Okay.
So that was an actual arena show.
Okay. That
we did. It was probably 15,000, 20,000 people there.
What's the biggest size audience you've played to?
I've done a bunch of shows in stadiums that were 100, 90,000, 100,000. I did a Hyde Park show with Anastasia that was probably in the hundreds of over 100,000. But we played in Morocco. I want to say it was a couple of years ago with Christina, and that was reportedly over 200,000 people.
That's nuts, man.
It didn't look like that to me, but it's hard to tell. And when it gets that many people, you never know how big it is. And it was an outdoor show, and it wasn't even in an arena or a stadium. It was just a gigantic area.
Any adjustments you have to make when you're in front of a crowd like that?
No, because it's kind of muscle memory first, and having fun second. It's you got, as long as you're having fun, which I always do with those guys on stage.
Oh.
It's pretty easy, and sound wise, it's usually pretty much the same because we're always on in-ears, and it's usually a consistent monitor guy who knows what we like and who's one of the best in the business. So
it's amazing.
Gear wise, sometimes just because a lot of fly dates, you never know what you're going to get gear wise. I'll have a list of amps that I want, and I know I might not get the Riveras that I want because I'm a big fan of Rivera amps. I've got a bunch of them. I've been friends with the Rivera family, Paul Sr. and Paul Jr. for over 20 years now that I've been working with those guys. And so that's always first on my list. If I can get a Rivera somewhere, like in when I did the Prince celebration, Paul Rivera actually built a pair of amps and sent them out to Minneapolis for me, which was amazing.
Wow, that's cool.
Some shows. So can't say enough good things about Rivera. Those guys are the best, and they make the most badass amps. So that's always my first choice. But then sometimes I might end up with a pair of beat up Fender Twins,
right?
Or a pair of Deluxes or a pair of DeVilles or whatever ends up coming out of whatever backline company there is in Istanbul that they had to get. You never know what's going to show up. So the climate's changed a lot as far as like flying with gear.
In what way has it changed?
Well, I remember like years ago doing private shows in Russia or in Spain, and they would fly our gear and fly my entire rig, fly my amps and everything. Now It's just like, hey, let's just get in and get out and use whatever backline they have.
But you bring your own guitars.
Oh yeah. I'll bring my own guitars and a pedal board, and that's it.
When you have to do a private show like in Russia or something, is it like, do you like zip in and zip out, or do you have time to hang there, or not really?
It all depends. Usually it's a 5-day trip, travel day. you get there, you get acclimated, you have a day off, you have a day of, semi-production day where we go in and do a sound check, and then the next day do the show, and then the following day leave. So it feels like we're there for a week.
Yeah.
Even though we're really just there for 3 days. Wow.
Yeah, do you know, you probably don't know this guy on the East Coast, Oz Noy?
I know Oz.
Okay. Yeah. He made
Oz has been here in my studio.
He has?
Yeah. In fact, Oz, last year I was touring with, I was working with Idina Menzel, and I couldn't do the full tour. I did all the promo stuff and did all the fly dates with her, and we did the UK and did Japan, and then I came back and I couldn't do the tour because of some other obligations and things were coming up. I was finishing the Magnolia record, which was a big, that was one of the big reasons for me staying home. And Oz took over that tour. So Oz.
That's very cool. How do you know him? Because you're on opposite coasts. I wouldn't think you guys travel in the same circles.
We had some mutual friends, which always helped. We're actually in an ad together for, I believe it was for M Audio years and years ago. Like, that's I want to say like 12 or 13 years ago, 14 years ago, for the black box, the M Audio black box.
That is so funny.
Some work. So we were in an ad side by side together, but no, I had never met.
And then
and I've heard about it, and I knew about him back then. And then we actually met finally through Yamaha.
Okay. That's funny. Because he made a comment. It's always funny talking to him. It's like Zohan, right? No. And he made a comment. He goes, this is a really difficult business physically. He goes, and I don't mean, lugging guitars and amps around. He goes, it's hard physically. You're flying out to Russia, for example. Yeah. He goes, and it's not like, we get a week there and we can relax and, walk around. And he goes, and if you are there for a week, it's because you're playing 5 shows. So you're traveling every night from show to show. Yeah. And he goes, people don't realize. And, I think he's a little younger than you. But close. And he was like, as you get older, this is just like beats you up, man. It's
right.
Flying.
It does. The last trip, the Azerbaijan trip, kind of messed me up coming back. Because it's 23 hours of flying. Between
crazy,
between one airplane and the next. So you got it's a 23-hour travel day to get to the other side of the world. And when I came back, I was messed up for a good 4 or 5 days. But I fortunately I sleep on flights very well, especially long flights. I can get 10 or 12 hours of sleep on a flight.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But with no drugs.
That is pretty good. It's hard to do that.
Yeah.
But plus you're over there, it's probably like 12, 13 hours time zone difference.
Yeah. I think
that's tough.
7-hour time difference. But it, when we got there, and then the next morning, it's like, all right, let's get up and do stuff and walk around and see the city and enjoy it, because we got one day to do it.
Yeah.
So that day off, it's like you hit it hard, and then everybody meets in the bar at night, and then you hit it a little too hard at night, and then you wake up the next day and work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough business.
I think our lobby call for the last trip leaving, the lobby call was like 3 a.m.
Holy shit.
So we got back after the show, got back to the hotel at like 11. And I heard party on the 19th floor, party, I went, packed up my stuff, took a shower, and laid down and fell asleep for 2 hours. I came down to the lobby at like, 3:15 a.m. and as everybody started coming down, I could smell the alcohol. Everybody had just partied all night until it was time to leave. And I think I was the only one that wasn't drunk on that flight coming back.
Yeah, but you probably had the best flight of everybody, man.
Yeah, I slept pretty good.
Are you pretty tame like that, party-wise?
Nowadays, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll have a couple drinks and have some fun, but I tend to not overdo it.
No. As you get older, man, it's just no fun when overdoing it at all. Yeah, it's just not enjoyable.
I haven't overdone it in quite a while.
Good for you, man.
And there were times like touring with, and I I toured with New Kids on the Block for 8 years. And that's an ongoing thing. It's why I can't believe it's been 2 years since I haven't done it, almost 2 years. But yeah, I started with them in 2008, and then it's the same band, the same unit that works with Christina, with Rob Lewis and Ethan Farmer, and ultimately Stanley Randolph came in on that too. We have fun, we have fun on stage. We'll have drinks on stage, and we'll start out the night with drinks in the dressing room, and then have some fun on stage. I usually don't drink after the show. I just drink during the show. And it's fun. We would have a blast. But then by the time I get back after 3 months of drinking every night during shows, I got to do a liver cleanse.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. Yeah.
And I rarely drink when I'm home.
Yeah.
When I'm home, in LA with my family, I rarely have a drink. I don't really get out much.
Yeah. Well, you're so you got to decompress from all this when you're home. You got to have downtime, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Hey, and this last one, pick whichever one you like. Tupac, Mariah Carey, or Nas? How you got the gig and a cool story.
Well, the Tupac thing, Nas is a part of that because Nas actually ended up working on a song that I co-wrote and co-produced. Claudio Coini, who's an engineer, producer, awesome friend, probably some of the best ears in the business. I would say two of the best ears in the business. And one of my oldest friends in LA. He had been working on some of the posthumous Tupac stuff, between, retracking stuff, working with the Outlaws on stuff, archiving the tapes. He was doing a lot of work on that, and he started calling me in for sessions with the Outlaws and playing on a bunch of Tupac stuff. And then we ended up working on the Better Days record, where I did an acoustic version of a song that Tupac had done years ago, but never heard the original version. But we did an acoustic version of Thug's Mansion, and that ended up becoming a single and a video, and I even got some FaceTime on that video, which was kind of cool. But there's a version with just Tupac. There's a version with Nas on Nas's record. I think Nas is on the Tupac album also. And Jay Phoenix was a vocalist awesome vocalist and writer. So I got some writing and production credit on a Tupac record, which is awesome. I just wish I would have actually worked with him when he was alive, because I think it would have been even more interesting.
Man, you've so let me ask you. So there's going to be obviously there's tons of guitar players listen to this, so they're probably sitting there thinking, I mean, you've worked with some major people, and you've been doing this for a long time, and obviously your work ethic, that's a big element to this. What do you think that has allowed you, for the guys listening to this saying, shit, how has that happened? What, like this, not this, I hate to use the term, the secret sauce, but your career has been really prolific for a long time with some high profile people. What do you think are the things that you're doing that contributed to that?
Oh man. Well, definitely right place, right time. Mm-hmm. That's always no,
and that's a big, and you know what? I'm glad you said that, because that is a big part of it,
It totally is. But for me, it all started with practicing. You got to practice. You got to work your craft. You got to have that work ethic of which actually, the work ethic started from my grandfather. It was practice all the time. Practice an hour a day, practice 2 hours a day. When when I was, 7, 8 years old, practice two hours a day, 3 hours a day. that's a lot of work, and it's putting in that time pays off. So you got to practice. You got to, I keep going back to that, and I had that conversation with my 9-year-old son yesterday about practice. About the time that you have to put in. You can't just expect to get better at something if you don't put in the time. You can't expect to progress in a field if you don't get better. So you got to put it in the time. So I think that it starts from that. You got to really, you have to be focused. And then once you've got that focus and you put in the time, you put in the energy, you start developing relationships. And that's the next step in broadening your career is relationships. Now, if you're an asshole, people don't want to hang out with you and don't want to play with you and have fun with you because if you can't.
Yes. If you're an asshole, nobody wants to hang out with you.
So
Two words.
I wasn't, consciously trying to not be an asshole, but maybe that was another thing that was instilled in me by my grandfather and by my parents and having really good friends and people who are supportive around you and having the mindset of, you can do anything.
Hold on right there. Where did that come from? Because I think that is probably a limiting factor for a lot of people. Now I'm just talking about guitar. I'm a guy coming out of the business world, and I think I've seen that a lot in business where people feel limited. Because what really amazes me is that you've played with some this is like literally all over the board. I mean, and I say that in a positive. I mean, not like hey man, that's really amazing. Because this, you're playing at a high level all over the place. This isn't like, you're a blues guy or you're a metal guy. This is all sorts of shit. But
I think the versatility came from growing up where I did too.
Yeah.
Putting myself in different situations, just, ending up in different situations and being open to playing everything. I started with classical first, and at the same time I was learning classical music on violin and on guitar. I was listening to the Beatles and listening to the Stones and listening to Sly Stone and listening to James Brown and listening to Earth, Wind and Fire and just listening to everything all across the board. And when I remember finding, I don't know how old I was. I must have been 9 or 10 or maybe 11, finding an Ahmad Jamal record in my mom's closet. I remember there were 2 records. It was Ahmad Jamal and Errol Garner. And that was the first time I really listened to jazz. And that totally turned my head around. And then I started going down that path and I heard Bitches Brew and Headhunters and Return to Forever, all the Return to Forever records. And that twisted me to the point where, okay, if I work on this music, if I work on, I've worked on classical, if I work on jazz, I work on rock, and I'm playing in a funk band, and I'm, before I knew it, I've been playing all kinds of styles. The only thing I didn't really have access to musically in Philly was country. That's the only thing I didn't really grow up with. Although, I heard Hank Williams and heard some of the classic country and western. Mm. But country wasn't real big in Philly when I was growing up, and R&B was
right.
R&B and funk, and I wanted to play. I went through a period where all I wanted to do was play jazz. I wanted to play fusion. I wanted to, I wanted to go that route. But the gigs that were paying were R&B gigs, and doing that kind of stuff was, to me, I loved rock also, but the stuff that was paying was more R&B, and I went into that avenue so easily, and it was fun, and it felt great. The music felt so great to me, and I could get paid. Yeah, and it was closer to jazz than rock was. It made more sense. There were more changes. There was more. It was a little more challenging. So I kind of went with that and went that route, and ended up touring with a bunch of different R&B acts, and it. To me, it just made more sense musically.
Yeah.
It was a little more substance than just playing in a rock band.
Wow. Yeah, it's just really amazing. Like the and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. It's just like, it is what it is. It's amazing that, you've done this at high level. 16 years with Christina, 8 years with New Kids on the Block. That's like, that's fucking impressive. It's just like, wow, those are great gigs, and like, there's not tons of those gigs out there, and one thing I'm hearing too is that you were open to chasing where the money was paying. And I think that's a smart thing as a business guy. And I think for some reason I hear a lot of musicians it's like, it's a catch-22 in music. Like, a lot of guys, they want to make money, but they feel uncomfortable making money, sort of, it's like, it's a bad thing. I think there's a lot of remnants of the sort of like struggling artist lying around, but yet every guy I talk to says, hey man, being broke sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, you got a gig?
So, I kudos to you for saying, hey, I want to get paid for this, because it's like anything else. If you don't want to get something, you're not going to get it. Real simple.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's a job, right?
Yeah. Makes sense to me.
You work for years. You work your ass off for years on your craft. You should get paid for it. You should get paid well. Doctors and lawyers go to school.
Absolutely.
Musicians put in more time in school and more time studying and more time. It makes sense. You get paid for what you do. You work on your craft. You get to a point where it's professional, and you have a professional mindset, and you show up on time, and you show up knowing the music, and you show up being able to read the music. It's a job.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. I agree with you. I put credit to you for like saying, shit, I want to get paid. I'm working hard.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it's, if you were a doctor or a lawyer or any other profession, nobody would question it. So I'm
that goes back to my grandfather too, which, that's how I learned. That was his job. So that's how I knew that's what it was. It wasn't just something I loved to do. I knew it was a job too. And I remember one of the first times I actually got paid, I think I might have been 13 or 14, playing in it was either a bar or a restaurant with a couple of friends. And then that band started getting paid more and more. And then that led to more things, and that led to stuff on the road. And yeah, once I figured, okay, yeah, I'm getting in a van or a U-Haul or a Chevette, and we're driving across the country. Yeah, we got to get paid for this.
Yeah. It's good that, it seems like, again, it goes back to what you said, your granddad really sort of made that all okay. Like, it normalized it for you. And I think that was a big leg up for you. And congratulations for taking advantage of that.
Thanks, man. It's not easy.
Nothing's easy, bro. What's easy, man? I haven't found easy. I haven't found easy yet, man. When you find it, let me know.
Music business is not easy for anybody. Yeah. Even people that you see working all the time, it's not easy. It's, we gotta fight for what we deserve, and we usually don't get it.
No,
it's not very often that musicians get paid what they're worth.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And that's kind of a crime, especially nowadays, where there's an entire generation that sees music as being free.
Yeah. Yes, you're preaching to the choir, man.
And they don't understand what live music is. And there's an entire generation that thinks, oh, we'll go and see this DJ do a show, and that's music. That's not seeing a show. That's seeing something pre-recorded.
Yeah.
That's seeing a light show. That's not experiencing people and their craft that have worked on it for years and years coming together and experience something themselves and spreading it out and spreading that musical love out to thousands of people. That's an experience. I remember going to see concerts when I was a kid that blew my mind. what was your first concert, Craig? What was the first concert?
The first one I remember.
Sorry to be interviewing you.
No, it's all good, man. The first one I remember, I think it was one of these two was, I think Ted Nugent opening up for Aerosmith at the Garden. And I was in the fucking seeing dots on stage. I was so far away. Yeah.
Wait, Ted Nugent, I would imagine Derek St. Holmes was singing with him at that time.
I would think so. Yeah. I would think so.
I got to play with Derek a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
I was hired to, I was in the Hired Gun documentary.
That's right.
I was interviewed for that. And then the director and the producers asked me to be the musical director for the live portion of it. So I was kind of responsible for, figuring out, who's going to play what, who's going to play together, what songs are we going to do, get the songs to everybody. And Derek St. Holmes was in the film. So he flew in for that. And that guy's voice is still incredible.
Real good voice.
I was never a big Nugent fan, but his voice always, not Nugent's voice, Derek St. Holmes' voice. A lot of people thought Ted Nugent had this amazing voice. That voice was Derek St. Holmes. That was,
Did you play with Rob McNally? He's a buddy of mine.
No, I don't think I played with Rob.
He was in the movie.
Was he? I don't think he was there for the jam part, for the live part of it.
Maybe, I don't know, but I know he was in the movie.
Yeah, no, we had, that was an incredible experience because we had Rudy Sarzo, we had Kenny Aronoff, Liberty DeVito, Phil X, Phil Buckman.
I interviewed Rudy. He's a pretty deep guy, man. We had a pretty intense conversation.
And Rudy is awesome. I love Sarzo.
Yeah, he has some good stuff to say.
He's such a good person, man. He really is.
Hey, so that being said, that you've had this career, what are some of the obstacles that you've had to deal with along the way? Either music, personal, business, stuff you've had to overcome.
Yeah, all of the above.
Give an example or two that you can.
You make sacrifices. I think that's another step about being a musician, being a working musician, is you have to make sacrifices. You make sacrifices with your friends, your family, your own concept of what you want to be doing. When I was younger and thinking, okay, this is my career, I wasn't thinking, oh, I want to play with whoever the pop star is at the time. I just wanted to play. I wanted to be in a band and play in front of people and get that, experience that energy live and then make records. And I've done that, but I never thought, okay, I want to play with, whoever the hottest pop star is at the time, which I would not want to do that right now. I wouldn't want to play with whoever the hottest pop star is.
Why?
Well, at this moment,
because musically,
whoever the hottest pop star is isn't very musical.
Yeah. Okay. I get it.
But that's just the climate of today's music. And that's another, I don't want to get on a tangent.
No. That's another podcast.
Yeah, sure. It sure is. But you make sacrifices in, all kinds of ways. I went on the road when I was pretty young. I toured for a couple of years with a local band, and we were playing all kinds of stuff in different clubs all over the country. And I went back and I got married when I was 19.
Oh, wow.
And I was teaching guitar full time. I was working in a music store. I was playing gigs. I was doing everything I could locally. And that was a sacrifice to my career because I started a family. We ended up having 2 kids, and then ultimately that didn't work out. Just as far as the marriage, the kids worked out just great. Yeah. They're amazing. They're phenomenal. They're amazing kids. Marriage didn't work out, so there's a sacrifice there. Yeah. I had to go back on the road. I had to keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That's what I'm here for. Music was it's always there for me. It's always been there for me. That's what I'm here for. So I had to keep doing it. So I went back on the road after getting divorced and spent another 10 years on the road before I got married again.
Yeah.
Found the woman that I'm supposed to be with for the rest of my life and had another child. And every time I get on an airplane or get on a bus, it's another sacrifice, being away from family, having to leave. I left Philly, which I never thought I was going to stay in Philly my whole life. Even when I was a kid, I dreamed about coming out to LA.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. So leaving, not conscious. I never consciously left Philly and said, I'm moving to LA. I just went on the road.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
I still had an apartment in Philly with a bunch of stuff in it. And then, I had to go back and put stuff in storage and I don't even know what happened to that stuff that was in storage because I never went back. I think that stuff was, it wasn't part of my life anymore. And I'd been gone for too long. And, so there's, you make all kinds of decisions and sacrifices. And when I ended up in LA, I wasn't thinking, oh crap, I'm moving to LA. I said to the whoever the tour manager was at the time, I said, oh, now fly me back to LA because I got some work to do there. I had some sessions lined up. It was in between touring, and I just couch surfed for a while. I stayed on. I slept on a futon in Doug Grigsby's studio in Encino for 8 or 9 months while I was on and off the road, and I kept coming back to him and working with him in his studio and eventually playing with him with Tina Marie. And it was just, one thing after another. And then I realized, oh, I miss all my friends back in Philly. All these guys that I grew up with and guys that I played with when I was younger. And they're still my closest friends. And I still talk to those guys all the time. I don't necessarily see them too often, maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year. I'll see, but they're still a big part of my life. But the sacrifice is they're not in my life on a daily basis. And if I was still in Philly, they would be.
Yeah, that is a lot of sacrifice.
Yeah, and my kids, my older kids, live on the East Coast. That's a sacrifice. My mom, my sister, my brother, I don't see family as much. So, there's that part of it that's, that's a challenge that, it's what we all have to deal with when we move to a different place or, be separated from our families like that. And most people, a lot of people live in the town that they grew up in.
Yeah.
All over the world. They live in the town that they grew up in.
Or they come back. It's another weird thing.
Or they come back. Transplanting yourself into another place is weird. And sometimes I think about it. I've been in LA for a long time, over 20 years. And this is home. When you own a house somewhere, you have a child, your area code and your zip code. And these are things that are ingrained in you after 20 years.
Yeah. And
I think every once in a while, like we're about to move, we bought a new house. So we're about to move in a couple of days. And I'm thinking, wow, this is crazy. I still can't believe that I live out here. I live in, I'm a California guy.
Yeah. That's weird when you grow up in an urban East Coast city. Yeah. I can understand that.
Yeah, growing up in Philly, it's a very, it's a very specific thing.
Yeah,
and it's similar to New York in certain ways, and it's very close to New York, and I spent a lot of time in New York. But Philly has its idiosyncrasies, and it's there's a lot of Phillyisms, and fortunately, there are a lot of people from Philly that are out here in LA, and get a taste of that every once in a while.
Sure, but thank you. That is a lot of sacrifices. If you had to go back and give advice to your younger self, is there anything that you, wish that you would have heard yourself, assuming you would have been open to listening?
Yeah, I think I would talk to myself more about production and I would have gotten into that sooner, which I kind of did. I was always, doing my own productions on first on a pair of cassette decks and overdubbing with cassette decks when I was 10 years old or 11 years old. And then I remember getting my first 4-track. I think it was a Fostex X15 little 4-track cassette. And I started with that, but I wish I would have focused on that more.
Because it would have given you another plan B sooner.
Yeah, well, I think I just would have learned more, and I always paid attention to production on records. It was something I always listened to the way a snare drum sounded, or the placement of certain strings or certain instruments, the way things are put together. I did study production, but I wish I would have been more hands-on sooner.
Well, you're doing a lot of it now, so.
Yeah, I am. I'm doing quite a bit now, and I love it. I love it. I really love it. I really wouldn't change that much, honestly.
Good.
There aren't too many things where I could say, "Oh, yeah, I'd do that differently." I think we're all on a path, and there's a reason why, and there's a spiritual aspect to it where you sometimes you just have to roll with it. You can't force things, and I think I would definitely give myself some advice as far as business, for sure, because I've always trusted people, especially when it came to business, which that's something I didn't know well enough. Maybe I would have benefited from taking a business course, or talking to someone who really knew business and studying that end of it a little more, because I got screwed. It's the music industry. Everybody gets screwed.
Yeah.
In entertainment, people get screwed all the time, every day. That's what it's about, because there's always somebody who's not creative and not a musician and not a writer or a producer. They're the ones that are going to end up screwing you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the one thing I wish I knew more of when I first really got into the music industry.
The business end of it. That's a pretty common
end of it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a pretty common.
I've written songs that went to number one and got screwed
and had no co-writes on it, or
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though I was very present and I was there, and there are people that know that I was there, but when it came time to having access to a lawyer, I didn't.
Yeah.
And the lawyer that was in charge had way too much power, and didn't care about the musicians that were involved or somebody that co-wrote or co-produced, and didn't think twice about not giving up another piece of the pie. So that is something that I wish I had known more of. And to me, it was just too easy to trust everybody.
Yeah. That's a pretty common thing, Yeah. Let's talk about gear for a minute, because you got a couple of guitars around your studio. Just a couple.
I got a few of my favorites scattered around here.
What's your go-to right now, and what other 2 or 3 would round out your top?
Wait, what was that?
I'm sorry. What's your go-to guitar right now, and what other 2 or 3 of them would round out your top list?
Right now, my go-to guitar is it's fairly new. It's not even a year old. I think it's about 6, maybe 8 months old. Built in the Yamaha custom shop in Calabasas, out here in California. It's a Revstar. I know you can see it.
Yeah, it looks like just to describe it to the listeners.
It's hard to describe. It's kind of it's
combination of an SG and a double cutaway.
Yeah, it's a double cutaway. It's probably closer to an SG than anything else, which makes sense because my favorite guitar when I was a kid was an SG.
Okay.
Which I finally just got a Gibson SG recently that a friend of mine gifted to me.
Much thicker than an SG though.
Yeah, it's definitely thicker. It's a thicker body. it's a totally flat top like an SG, little bevel on top. But this is a custom Yamaha Revstar, which is it's one of their newer body styles and one of their newer designs they've come out with in the last 5 or 6 years, I think. Revstar, super cool guitars because it's got the entire Revstar line has the quality and the vibe of an old school guitar with some modern touches. If you want it, there's enough of a range in the Revstar line to kind of get whatever you want in a guitar.
And it's got a P90 and a humbucker. Yeah,
my number one is it's got a Lawler P90, which sounds killer in the neck. It's got a John Suhr humbucker, which is it's the Doug Aldrich humbucker, which is that was a great suggestion by Pat Capolitano, who built this guitar for Yamaha. Built it for me at the Yamaha custom shop. Pat's an amazing builder, and he's built a couple guitars for me since he's been there at Yamaha. He's made some amazing instruments for Yamaha artists, and not only that, he's designed some really, really cool guitars. Pat is awesome, so he put this together for me. So it's got a P90, a humbucker, and a 5-way switch.
And a beautiful sparkle, royal blue. It's beautiful, man. Sparkle with a small white.
It's kind of blue. It's got aqua. It's a pretty amazing sparkle.
And it's got
and it's got a Fishman power bridge too, which is something for me. Versatility has always been key with the guitar too. Like, what's the one guitar I could play that I can use for everything? I've always loved SGs. I've always loved Tellys. Telly to me is probably the most versatile guitar.
And so many guys feel that way.
Like, across the board, you can play any style.
So many guys feel that way,
and
man.
It works. And it's such a funky guitar, and it feels so good. And it just tone wise, Telly always it spoke to me. The first time I played a Telly, it really spoke to me. I went through a period of guitars growing up, and playing, like, especially throughout the 80s. I played Steinbergers. At one time, I think I had 3 Steinberger guitars.
Wow.
So I was always, I was always trying to be, cutting edge, what's new, what's different. And I had a rack full of Rockman gear in the 80s. I had all the rock modules. But I've gone back and forth with gear, but there's a couple guitars I wish I still had that I had gotten rid of over the years. But right now, like, getting back to your question, the number one, this guitar it's kind of a Swiss Army guitar. It's got all of the tones. The 5-way switch, really, the way Pat wired it. It can sound like a Les Paul, it can sound like a Telly, and it can sound like a Strat.
Very cool, man.
It's got that out of phase thing if I need it. The middle position really does kind of sound like a Telly, which is cool. And it's got the Fishman power bridge, so it's got stereo output, a TRS output. So one side goes to the pedal board into amps, and it sounds like an amazing electric. The other side goes into an acoustic preamp, either a Fishman Aura or like the old. I have a bunch of old Yamaha AG Stomp, which is a killer acoustic, like too big to be a pedal. It's like the size of a laptop. It's an amazing sounding, like mic modeling, acoustic modeling thing, and that thing sounds amazing. But even if you just take that output and go into a DI and EQ it right, it sounds like a freaking acoustic. At the same time that you're getting an electric sound, you get an acoustic sound. So
that's really awesome.
To me, that added to a thickness. And I learned that when I got a Parker guitar in the 90s. I got a Parker Fly, which I think I had 3 of them over the years.
Do you still have those?
Still have one.
They sell for an incredible amount of money. I've seen. Yeah, I saw a couple on eBay. Yeah, pretty pricey.
They hold their value. Those Parkers from the 90s were really cool. I still have one, actually. My son is playing my Parker.
Your Parker?
Because Yeah, I hadn't played that. I hadn't taken it out of the case in 10, 12 years. I hadn't seen it in a long time, and I found it, and I was like, oh, this is a good guitar for a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
Really easy to play. The neck is so thin, it's really easy to play. It's easy to hold, so he's playing that one now. But the thing that I loved about those guitars was the acoustic bridge. It had a Fishman bridge, and you could blend the electric and acoustic. So I've been doing that ever since. When I first started with Yamaha guitars, I was actually introduced to Yamaha guitars through Paul Rivera Jr.
Okay.
Paul said I had been working with Rivera for several years at that point and become really good friends with Paul Jr. And Paul said, yeah, let's go over to Yamaha. And I was like, really? You just go over to Yamaha? He said, yeah. And he took me over to Yamaha, and it was this little tiny shop in North Hollywood where there were 3 guys. There was Ken DePron, who's still the director of Yamaha Guitars US. He's been there for 30 years or so, or more. And he introduced me to Ken. He introduced me to Eric Gorish, who now has Lush Guitars in North Hollywood. He's building his own guitars. But Eric was building guitars and designing guitars. And John Godesi, who was also building guitars and designing guitars there. And they customized a Mike Stern Pacifica for me. It's that Mike Stern Telly.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it. Actually, the first guitar I got from Yamaha was an acoustic. And it sounded amazing. And I always loved Yamaha acoustics. I think I hadn't had a Yamaha nylon string years before. But they customized that Mike Stern model for me. And, flipped the humbucker in the single coil, and I ended up with a humbucker in the bridge and a single coil in the neck, and a Fishman power bridge. And that did everything.
Yeah.
And, that turned into, we need a backup for that for touring. Then that yellow Telly became my favorite guitar. That became number 1. And then, couple different builders at Yamaha over the years tried different things. And John Godesi built me this really cool single cutaway, like very Les Paulish with 2 P90s and a Bigsby with a Fishman power bridge. And that was like my main guitar for a while. And just different models over the years that Yamaha has tried to, they just keep improving on it. And I can't speak highly enough about Yamaha as a company and their ethic as a company. I just love their, just their idea of pleasing the customer, making people happy with what they produce. And that carries over into every one of their lines, from motorcycles to pianos to guitars and drums. Everybody's really happy with what they make. And having a custom shop access and having guys like Pat Capolitano build amazing instruments, that's like, I never thought that existed when I was a kid. Like I could, walk into a shop and say, yeah, let's sit down and figure out what this guitar should be. And then they build it for you, and it's amazing. And it's exactly what you need.
It's funny how that little trip sorry, go ahead.
It's like having the best possible toolbox.
Yeah.
If you're doing construction or you're building houses, you got to have the best tools. I feel like I have the best tools. And I've always been into vintage instruments, but I've never, I have a couple of vintage pieces, but I still rely on the stuff that really gets the job done for me. Is like this number 1 guitar right now is so versatile that I can use it on anything, and it stays in tune really well. It plays in tune, it stays in tune where some of the vintage instruments might not.
But it's funny how that little trip, you're like, oh, you just go down to Yamaha, and that started like a 20-year relationship.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny how that works. So what would be number 2 and 3 if that Revstar is number 1 right now for you?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I have some favorites, but I also have the ones that I know are going to be reliable for work.
Talk about the favorites, the ones that you enjoy, because the other ones are just tools, like, not to take away, but they're more like a hammer or a screwdriver.
Right.
Talk about
I would honestly say the top three probably are Yamahas.
Holy shit. That's a badass endorsement right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know I can do everything I need. When I was a kid, I saw a picture of Carlos Santana playing like an S, but it was different. It was more round, and it was a Yamaha. It was a Yamaha SG. I think it was probably an SG 3000 or an SG 2000, and I fell in love with it. And that was probably, I want to say it was probably late 70s. I saw that picture, or early 80s. So when I started working with Yamaha, I remember asking this. It wasn't in the very beginning when I first started with them, but when Mike Tempesta was there, I remember asking Mike about the old SGs, and he said, "Oh, stay tuned. There's something coming." So they did a reissue of some of the SGs, and then they started an entire new line of the Yamaha SGs, and they are really truly badass guitars. And I'll reach for my black Yamaha SG before reaching for my Les Paul to get that tone, because I know it sounds super fat. It sounds amazing, and it plays in tune, and it stays in tune. And
that's so key, man, especially for someone like you that's, gigging, studio, you using the guitar for everything. You got to have a tool that stays in tune, man.
Right.
That's like the last thing you need to deal with.
Yeah, you don't want to swing a hammer and have the head fly off.
No, that's a good analogy. Yeah.
Because your hammer is just old. Yeah. And I've had some amazing techs over the years that have really maintained and helped me understand how to take care of guitars.
But it's nice when you don't have to do like MacGyver on something, that it's just naturally, oh, this stays in tune. How not? It's,
yeah, exactly. So I would say the top three probably are Yamahas, but I also have a Chris Campbell custom Telly that Chris built for me. That's one of my favorite guitars. Tone wise, it's unreal. And it's Chris's pickups. He put a B bender on it for me. It's silver sparkle, so it looks really badass. But yeah, that's one of my favorites. I used that quite a bit on the Magnolia Memoir record, because there was a couple songs that just screamed Telly. It just needed that tone, and it really does sound like a classic Telly. But yeah, I think those guitars. I'm just looking around to see, and I've got quite a bit of Yamaha here. The Yamaha 2200 SA 2200. It's I can see your 335.
Yeah,
it's that style, and they nailed it and made it even more versatile than a 335. Which to me, I always go back to the versatility thing, because that's where I came from. Musically, I thought, okay, I need a guitar that can be versatile, because I might be playing funk, I might be playing rock, I might be playing jazz, I might be playing R&B, I might be playing country. So I need something that's super versatile. So I was always gravitated towards guitars that were versatile, and I think that's why I loved what Yamaha was doing, because they could do that. They had no problem with splitting coils and putting in weird switches and trying things that would make it versatile enough.
Very cool, man. Hey, you can't say you don't believe in, you can't say that you're with a company for the sponsorship over 20 years,
For sure. There's people that have worked at that company for so long that they're friends. They're friends of mine. I've developed a relationship with the company over the years. I've done research and development with Yamaha. I worked on the SRT system, which is it's a pickup system, preamp system that's in all of their new the new higher end acoustic electrics, which I can't say enough about Yamaha acoustics. But when you plug one of those in, it sounds like there's a microphone in front of it. It doesn't sound like a piezo bridge that normally you plug an acoustic guitar in, it sounds like ass. and you have to EQ it, and you have to put it through processing, and you have to put it through an amazing preamp for it to sound amazing. These new Yamahas, you plug it into a DI, it sounds like it's got a microphone in front of it. It sounds great and warm right away. So that's a project I worked on with them, that they brought me in to work in the studio with different engineers and a bunch of different studios. We spent years working on that project, and they've changed it over the years. They've changed the system over the last like 5 or 6 years and narrowed it down to specific sounds. But that preamp system was specific to each body style, which was cool.
That's cool that you had a hand in developing that.
Yeah, I love doing that kind of stuff. I'll test anything. I'll try anything. If somebody says, "Hey, what do you think of this?"
Do you do a lot of your own work? Like, do you put pickups in and out, or do you not do that stuff?
I used to when I was younger, but I realized I wasn't doing it the right way once I saw people doing it the right way.
Yeah. It's time consuming too, and especially if you don't know, if you're not doing it right. It
is time consuming, and sometimes soldering irons can scare me.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
and I just don't want to fuck up. So I'd rather have somebody who really knows what they're doing do it.
No, I agree with that, man. It's like fixing your own roof. You got to.
Yeah. Trevor Cole has been teching for me for years, and Trevor's awesome, and he's got no problem doing that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, he's going out with Guns N' Roses today.
Oh wow!
So he's been touring with them for the last year. Trevor's going out with GNR. He's leaving soon, which sucks. He's flying out, so he'll be gone for a couple of months. But hopefully, he'll be back in time to do the Christina tour.
Christina thing.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have any? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say having a tech like that who really knows what they're doing and really cares for your gear, cares about the consistency of your gear and making sure everything works. It's so important. And if you can't have a tech, if you're not on a gig that can afford to pay for a tech, and you can't just afford to pay a tech out of your pocket, learn how to do it. Learn how to change pickups and experiment with stuff.
Yeah, you have to.
If I had to do it, I would do it. If I had the time right now to focus on that a little more, I would.
Well, yeah, that's what it comes down to: time and the opportunity costs of doing that versus something else.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, do you have any hobbies or interests outside of music?
Does music count?
Outside of music.
What's that?
I asked the guy that question one time. He goes, "Yeah, guitars."
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. I like to read, but I don't put enough time into it. I like to read books. I do like to write stories. Oh,
cool! Like lyrics or?
Well, I write. That's part of music. That's part of the job is writing lyrics. As a writer, I do that. But I started writing a series of children's books, which it's definitely a hobby, but it's something I don't put enough time into. And once I finish the series, then I'll have something else to promote.
Very cool.
But it's an entire series of children's books I've been working on. There's that. What else? As far it's all creative stuff. So it's kind of hard to remove myself from being a creative person.
Oh, you shouldn't have to, man.
But hobbies,
like you're not golfing or fishing on the weekends.
No sports. No. I did surf for quite a while when I was living at the beach. Which was amazing, and I need to get back into that. But it's more time consuming now because I'd have to drive. From Burbank to the beach it's not that easy.
Yeah.
But it's something I'd love to get back into is surfing because I thoroughly enjoyed that, and it was a lot easier when we lived on the beach and I could just walk with my surfboard out to the water. But man, that's a tough one. No, I can't say I really have much.
It's all good.
Not too many interests outside of music and creative things.
That's not uncommon,
I do love to cook.
What do you cook, man?
I do love to cook, but that's more out of necessity too.
Yeah.
And I do love like the satisfaction when people do taste something I've cooked and they really enjoy it.
What do you cook? What do you like cooking?
Mostly vegetarian stuff, stir fries. I mean, I'll make breakfast as many days of the week as I can, for the family and anybody else who happens to be here. But grilling is really easy and enjoyable. But yeah, I love cooking. That's something that's fun to do, and it's still creative. There's still an art to it.
Totally, and it's probably relaxing compared to what you're normally doing.
Yeah, it is.
What's the toughest? I'm going to ask you two more questions because I want to be sensitive to time, and then I want to talk about all the cool stuff you got going on. But toughest decision you ever had to make, or hardest thing you ever had to do?
Oh man, in the music business, or just life.
Music, personal life in general, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
I'd say that the first really difficult thing was not living with my kids. But that's part of life and divorce, and that was the hardest thing. And then leaving the city and not living in the same city as my kids and my family, and that was the single hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Man, I get you because I was divorced from my ex, and that was there's no frame of reference for that. It's really tough. Yeah.
I was pretty young too when I first had kids, so it was really
I was as
well to deal with.
Yeah,
and,
I was too.
Yeah, I'd say that was definitely the hardest decision. Everything else kind of seemed like it just flowed.
Good.
Like making decisions on gigs, just taking risks. A lot of times didn't seem like risks. It seemed like, okay, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing now. This is this gig came up. Yeah, I'm supposed to be doing this one now. And there have been times where, like, I actually did quit playing with Christina for a little while. I didn't do the Back to Basics tour. I quit.
Burned out. Just need a break.
Yeah, I just needed a different direction, and I ended up doing a tour with Anastasia, and then then ended up going back to Christina several years later. So it was just a little break, but and there were gigs that came up where I thought if I really focus on this, I could do this gig, get this gig, but stuck with other gigs instead. There have been times where I'm on a tour and I've gotten calls for other things and I had to turn it down.
Yeah, I'm sure that happens often.
And that's a tough thing to do. That's that's the worst. That's
well, you can what if your head a million times with that. That's the tough thing. Yeah.
But that's a problem that I want to have.
Yeah, right. That's a good problem to have.
That I feel like I'm blessed to have. That, okay, what if this comes up while I'm doing this? I got to figure it out. If this this TV show comes up and I'm already booked on a tour, I got to figure out what to do with that. And I know the sometimes you make a decision and it turns out in your favor, but sometimes it doesn't, and then it leads to something else. So
right, that's the thing. It's going to be okay one way or another.
Yeah. And it's persistence is the main thing. You got to be persistent about gigs and about your direction. But yeah, making those decisions and I think maintaining relationships is super important too, and that's something I've decided that is the most important thing, and not just in the business but in life is maintaining relationships and just being nice to people, which which a lot of times nowadays seems like people aren't. Yeah.
No, I feel you on that, man.
Seems like a wide open door to be an asshole. And it's acceptable. I don't accept that shit.
I feel you, man. I agree. Last question, Mike. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of this change has been intentional and deliberate, how much of it has been just a natural part of aging?
Oh man. I think it's as you get older, it's easier to be cynical. It's easier to be, it gets easier to be angry about shit and less tolerant. But I have to check myself sometimes and maintain the tolerance and understand that people are ever evolving and changing and trying to learn, and sometimes people don't learn, and you have to be tolerant of that and let people make their own mistakes. And I've made my own mistakes and I've learned from them, and I think that's one thing that's changed over the last 10 years or so, is that I have to focus on patience, where it used to be much easier. Now it's hard to turn on the TV and watch the news, and it's easy to lose your patience with that.
Man,
it's easy for me to lose my patience when I did a session 6 months ago or a year ago and I haven't gotten paid yet.
That's absurd.
But that's another part of me that that maybe has changed a little bit. I won't stand for that shit anymore.
You shouldn't.
I when I get a call about doing a label session, I want to get paid up front.
Yeah.
If I don't know you and you're coming to me from any major label, I need to get paid up front, because I've been screwed by major labels too many times. And I just won't do it again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, trust has changed over the years, for sure. I mean, I distrust people more than I ever have.
Because of your experience.
Which sucks, because that's not who I am. That's not in me. I grew up trusting people, and I still put trust up front, but now I'm just a little more guarded. Because
of your experiences.
Yeah.
That's amazing that you're more likely to get screwed from a major label who has all the money. Yeah. That blows my mind, man.
Yeah, you could get screwed by a major label and the biggest artists in the world easily.
That's just...
It happens every day. And it's not right. And I wish there was, there is a musicians union, but I wish there was a union that really looked out for musicians.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, the musicians union doesn't really cover, it doesn't help guys that are touring. It doesn't really help the guys that are busting their asses on the road, 9-10 months out of the year. And, the musicians union can't help a guy who's stuck on the road because he hasn't gotten paid yet. And he's been on the road for 4 weeks and he still hasn't gotten paid. There's nobody to step up for guys like that. And I'm starting to see communities of musicians coming together. There's an app called Jamcard. I don't know if you've seen Jamcard.
No, I haven't.
But Jamcard it's put together by a guy named Elmo Lovano, and Elmo's drummer who's been out there. He's a professional drummer. He's worked with big pop stars. Awesome drummer, awesome musician. And I'd started hearing about Jamcard and about Elmo's. At first I thought he was just doing jams. He was just he was putting on these events and filming them. But then I found out a little more about it, and then I met with Elmo and had lunch with him, and he's an awesome guy, and he's trying to bring musicians together as a community and help rely on each other, and not just say, it's kind of, Jamcard is kind of a social app where you can post things that you're doing and post things about yourself, but it's also a business card. It's your credit.
Is there a place where you could put reviews of like guys who are screwing people? Like, that's what it sounds like you guys need.
That's all over the internet. You can find that for sure. Yeah, you can find that. But I think Jamcard is turning into that. It's turning into a place of knowledge, and I hope there's guys like me who have experience. Hopefully we can help future generations of musicians from getting screwed.
Yeah, like the Yelp of the music industry or something like that.
Right. So Jamcard is part of that, and I have other friends who have talked about, Rob Lewis has talked about doing that, about wanting to just help musicians and forming some kind of, not necessarily a union, but something that's going to help people acquire the knowledge of the business. Because there are a lot of musicians out there getting screwed. There's a lot of younger guys who will just take a gig and it doesn't pay enough. And it's from an artist who's the biggest artist in the world, but they're still not paying enough. And there's something wrong with that. Gigs used to pay more. Gigs with the hottest pop star used to pay a lot more money than they do now. And there's really something wrong with that. There's a respect factor that's lost among musicians that are working their asses off, and guys that deserve to get paid, they're not getting paid as much as they should.
Man, I interviewed, he's an older guy. Do you know Reggie Young, who Reggie is?
Yeah.
Reggie's been on probably more sessions than anybody.
Right.
And when he first started in Memphis, he was playing literally on #1 records, like daily. He was getting paid $10. And I said, "You mean $10 a session?" He goes, "No, they just give us $10 like once
here
in a while." Yeah. And I'm like,
I had gotten it too. I played on some big records I didn't know I was playing on. And I was happy to get $50 for it.
And I'm trying to,
and then I heard it on the radio and I didn't know what I was, I heard all kinds of stuff. I've heard myself playing on songs that I never played on and never got paid for it.
So they just took the tape from.
I've heard myself sampled and being played on big hits that I got no credit for because I didn't actually work with that producer.
Wow. That's horrible, man. Yeah. They need like a Yelp of, so if you got a producer like that, he's known that, don't work with this guy unless, you get this document up front sign or this agreement signed.
We could expand on the whole producer role, and that there's that is another interview completely in another realm as far as what producers do. There's a lot of people that call themselves producers that are not musicians. There's a lot of people that call themselves producers that are not engineers, that don't music, but know how to put samples together.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not a producer. I'm not saying there's not an art to it, and it doesn't take an amount of talent to arrange things and put things together. But the producers that I aspired to be like were guys that produced real records with real musicians, and that sat in a room with guys and went over, how what the arrangements should be and how things should be recorded and how things should be captured, and getting the best possible performance out of somebody, and really understanding what each member of the band is doing, or understanding what the artist wants, and that's kind of a lost art. And I feel like the term producer has been misused a lot over the years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of producers who are programmers, and not to take away the art from it, but they might not necessarily be a musician. They might not know how to play a note.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what's lacking in music. Is a real musical production, and what the hell happened to a bridge? How come there's no bridges? My favorite part of the song is the bridge or the guitar solo, which you never hear anymore.
No, there's not a lot.
But that's a lost art. You don't hear guitar solos anymore. Even in a lot of rock stuff, you don't hear guitar solos. And even on the Magnolia Memoir record, there's literally one guitar solo
on the whole album.
Yeah, on the whole album, there's one guitar solo.
So let's talk about you have a bunch of stuff going on. Let's talk about some of that, including Magnolia Memoir. First of all, you have a new record and a band of your own coming out called, but the name of the band is Magnolia Memoir. The record is called Afterlife.
That's the single is called Afterlife. The album's called Steal the Stars.
Steal the Stars, and the single's called Afterlife, and they're coming out in September.
I think it's going to be late in June. We'll really start hearing some stuff and seeing some visuals because we just finished up a video. The band has existed for a while with Mela and Alex, the singer and the keyboard player. They've been working at this for a long time, and we've been friends for a long time. And I was a fan of the band. And last year we got together to write a song, and that turned into writing, like 14 songs. And
holy shit!
And it became more of a band thing because we were all writing together. There's 4 of us writing together, and with Alex and Mela, Dan Antunovich, who's one of the baddest bass players I've ever worked with. Dan's from New Zealand. The 4 of us sat in my studio and a couple times in Alex's studio, and we just wrote songs that we felt, we wrote whatever came out. And all of our different influences kind of combined to make this record. And then we produced the record out of Jim Scott's studio in Valencia, amazing analog wonderland. The studio is called Pliers, Plyrz.
That's a cool name.
Yeah, it's a cool spot because it's almost like a museum. Jim's got so many instruments there, and I mean, if you don't like the Wurlitzer that's set up, there's like 6 more to try, and he's got a bunch of cool guitar amps, a lot of vintage guitars, and really cool stuff. But the vibe in the studio is what's amazing, and his Neve console is incredible. So we produced the record there, along with Neil Baldock, who's an amazing engineer, and it's finally ready for consumption. Like, we want people to hear it. We really feel like it's a good record. And after listening to it, we finished the mastering, several months ago, and it's ready. It's ready for people to hear. So it's about time. It feels good to be part of the band and part of something that was just a great creative spirit.
Where can people find this or get pre-alerted to when it's coming out?
Definitely magnoliamemoir.com.
Great.
That's an easy way to do it. But the video, people start to be seeing and hearing stuff pretty soon.
Great. And please send a link over here. I'll drop it for sure. And that's Magnolia Memoir, Magnolia, Magnolia, Memoir, Memoir, correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. You're also going out on tour with Christina Aguilera real soon. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, Christina's got a tour. It's been probably 10 years since she's actually toured. She's got a tour coming up starting in September. One of the first big dates, which is really cool, is the North Sea Jazz Festival in Curacao. So we'll be doing that early in September, and then she's got a tour that's running through September, October. It'll be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. It's nice to work with a gig like that where you're doing the North Sea Jazz Festival and not like, the club with no electricity down the block. I mean,
although I've played at the club with no electricity down the block. That was in Santa Barbara. But I love those gigs.
I know, but it's
that
nice.
Is something I need to get back into because I did for a couple of years there. I was doing an improv thing every Sunday at the Federal Bar in North Hollywood with Chris Johnson and Courtney Leonard, and different musicians would come in, and we ended up forming a band called Invented Like Stars, and we did a big live video shoot. Tim Carmen was the keyboard player on that. Amazing mind. Tim's a genius and an awesome guy. So we had a really cool thing happen, and then everybody went back to work. Chris went on tour with Lady Gaga, and we all Tim went and did shows with Eric Clapton, so everybody was busy. So yeah. It's kind of hard to keep those things together. Even with more different gigs coming up, but we've got to forge on as a band and make things happen. So I do want to get back to like the local, playing locally somehow, somewhere, because I love to play and I still need to do it. And I've been talking to different friends about doing an improv thing every once in a while. So I will get back to that.
Very cool.
That tour is going to be happening in September. September, October, November, I think. And there's other projects coming up, and Magnolia Memoir is going to be doing shows in and out of that.
And
as well.
Polestar is the best place to find out information where Christina's touring.
Yeah, all those dates are on Polestar now, and there's probably going to be more added.
Okay.
There's also Name That Tune, which is a
Right.
TV show, game show that I worked on the pilot, and it's a killer band, really killer band on a live band on a game show playing music, and it's a lot of fun, and hopefully people start to see that early next year, early 2019.
And that's going to be on television once a week, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Or every day. Was it once a week?
I think that'll be a once a week, once a week kind of special once a week game show.
Very good, man. So
But who knows? If it goes really well, maybe we'll do 5 days a week, and maybe it'll be one of those gigs that I could just drive to every day and then come home.
I hope it is, man.
Yeah.
Also, the Prince celebration. You did that recently?
Yeah, the Prince celebration was in April. That was incredible because we did 2 completely different shows. We did a show at the Target Center in Minneapolis, and it was a killer band. It was all old old NPG members, New Power Generation members. I got to do share the guitar spot with Kat Dyson, who's an old friend. Kat Dyson had been she had worked with Prince and was part of New Power Generation in the 90s. And she's an old friend. We met in the 90s. So we finally got to really focus on parts and play together, and it was a lot of fun. But we did a show at the Target Center in Minneapolis with Prince on the big screen. So we had Prince's vocal and guitar track.
Was that weird?
Yeah.
I would imagine. Yeah, I would imagine.
It was weird and fantastic and magical at the same time because it was. It was like playing with him again. He's standing there. We're all watching him on little screens. Everybody's seeing him on the giant screen. And none of us are getting a click except for the drummer. Kirk beat Matt the entire show. So he got a click. So he knew when to tell us to start. He knew when to start. So, so we're all in sync with Prince. But, Prince's guitar tracks coming in and out and his vocal, leading us. And we're watching him on screen. And when he jumps and lands, we got to end the song.
Wow!
So it was really strange in the way that he's still leading the band.
Yeah. Wow.
But we did a completely different show with all different songs and a lot of obscure cuts that he hadn't played live. And we did 2 shows at Paisley Park, and it was incredible. Just being able to be there and experience that and. And watch Sheila E. stage dive while we were on stage. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. I interviewed Cat. Great guitars.
His fans really came back and enjoyed it and fueled us to do those shows. It was really cool.
And also you got something going on with DNA Guitar Gear, which you can find online at DNA, as in like DNA, right. Like your chromosomes, guitargear.com.
Right. Yeah. That's the DNA is making some really special products. They've got it's a guitar accessory company. So we've got the best stands ever made, best guitar stands ever made, best guitar hangers ever made. If you want to hang guitars on your wall, like I see you've got behind you, they are earthquake proof, which is great for us here in California.
Oh yeah.
Just the best stands. I road tested these stands. I was the first one to take them out and say, all right, let's beat the crap out of these. And we used them night after night and abused them. And Trevor threw them in trunks night after night. And we figured out what was going wrong with them and fixed the problems. And I really feel like they're the best guitar stands on the market, the best product. And then one product after another started developing and it's the company's growing. We've got the gig strap, which is one of my ideas, one of my inventions, my first patent ever. It's a piece that Velcros right onto your guitar strap and hits pressure points on your back and helps you relieve any tension in your back and your shoulder and increase blood flow to your left arm if you're, especially if you're right-handed, because the guitar strap cuts off your circulation to your left arm. We don't think about that when we're standing there for 3 or 4 or 10 hours in a rehearsal, and you've got, 6 pounds or 7 pounds on you, or bass players might have more.
Yeah.
And the gig strap has really helped me. The idea came out of necessity because I was having issues with my left hand and my wrist and my thumb and numbness in my thumb. And so, after going and seeing my doctor, who's a chiropractor and kinesiologist, and figuring out that I'm losing blood flow to my left arm, and that's why I'm cutting off the circulation. So I came up with the idea of the gig strap to help with that. And that's a product that's out there now that anybody can get. And it's been super helpful to me. So I hope it helps other people that might have the same issues.
And you can find it on dnaguitar.com, dnaguitargear.com.
That's correct.
Great. Awesome.
Or on Musician or on sweetwater.com or at Guitar Center or at Sam Ash or at, any number of music stores all over the world. You can find them now.
Awesome. So it's got regular retail distribution on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your website is?
Colorblindfish.com.
Well, how did that come about?
Colorblind Fish?
Yeah. If you know.
Well, Fish is an old family nickname.
Right.
Which may be the only one that's ever used it in a professional manner in the family, but it's an old family nickname. And I was definitely born without, not without color completely, but definitely color deficiency. So, I failed all the colorblind tests when I was a kid.
Oh, really? So you're literally colorblind.
Yeah. Yeah. So I see color. I get confused by color, and there are certain things I just can't see. But that's always just been my thing, and that became my production company, and my publishing company is Colorblind Fish Music. Very cool. So that's just always been part of me.
Okay, so it's colorblindfish.com is Mike's
and
website.
It's very out of date. My website is very out of date. I don't pay it enough attention, and I've had some great friends help me design it and put it up over the years, but I've never maintained it. So that's something I promised myself that I was going to get back into.
It's pretty robust, though. That being said, you've got a lot on there. Might not be up to date.
A lot, but there's, I wanted to do a gear page and I want to do videos, and I haven't had time for it.
Well, it's like a job, man.
I'm so impressed with guys that do gear videos. Guys like Sean Tubbs.
Sean Tubbs is great. Yeah.
Amazing gear videos. And Pete Thorne, who's probably, I don't think there's anybody more knowledgeable than Pete Thorne when it comes to gear. So, thanks to Pete for the videos that he does. And my friend Phil X has done a lot of videos. I want to do that. I want to get into that and have time for that. But
I think
I haven't found the time yet.
Yeah.
But I'd love to do with my website and do a YouTube channel where I'm doing that stuff. Eventually, once time, maybe I'll get into that. But I really appreciate the guys who are doing that and putting the knowledge on gear and helping figure out. I love the fact that there's guys out there that are doing that, because it's so helpful to so many people. And there's so much gear out there to choose from that, you never know. And it's always good to take a recommendation from somebody, even if you don't know them, they're a pro. And when there's a guy that can play like the way Pete plays and the way that Sean plays and the way that some of these guys demo stuff, it's amazing. Yeah. And it's so super helpful.
Yeah. Well, man, I really appreciate your time. Everybody, please check out Fish at colorblindfish.com. Support him on tour when he's out with Christina Aguilera. Check out his new single coming out called Afterlife, which is coming out in the end of June with his band Magnolia Memoir. And go to dnaguitargear.com. He's got that strap looks like it's really helpful, and it would benefit anybody who stands for a long time with their guitar. That's it, man. Thank you so much for your time.
It's definitely. Thank you, Craig. Thanks for having me, man.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this show. Thanks again to Fish Herring for spending time with us. Check him out online again at colorblindfish.com, and go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get notified about future episodes and get on our mailing list. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. Thanks, Fish. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.